Back there, you'll see it.
You don't like animals?
Yes, this is a poodle. Poodle.
Poodle is the same word used for baby's hair in Hawaiian.
That makes sense.
And the park in the 19th century, before it was a park, had an enterprising industry or attempted industry to take this hulu off the ferns and stuff pillows and mattresses. So the very first hotel in Yosemite Valley, the old Ahwahnee, what's now the Yosemite Hotel.
It's so soft.
Mattresses and pillows that came from stuff from Hulu Park. But the problem with it is that it mildews very quickly. So, and of course,
And it crushes down fast.
it
Bounce back.
it's bad news. But yeah, it's protection.
Beautiful.
The roots of the hapu'u, that's the name of the tree fern here, native tree fern. We're in native forest here primarily, except for grasses. That starch is really favored by another bioinvasive species introduced by the Polynesians and again by the Europeans, and that's the wild pig that would come up here and uproot these ferns to eat that starchy pith. And that creates in turn cavities for water to collect, which is a breeding ground for mosquitoes that are not native either. The mosquitoes came in 1826 through the island of Maui, through the whalers that brought it in from Mexico with its avian malaria that has wiped out native bird species essentially below about 3,000 or 3,500 feet. But you'll be in a range where there are native birds here today. Lots of little nectar feeders that feed off the red flowers of this oak-like tree, the Metrosideros or ohia, whose the closest relative of which is the Pohutukawa in New Zealand. How did it come on up here across those equatorial latitudes? Some errant bird migration, perhaps millions of years ago. The birds that feed or that pollinate these trees that are nectar feeders, actually I'm not sure they actually pollinate them, but they do feed off the flowers. Come from Central America. There are originally a few dozen species of these birds. Well, more than that. A few dozen, yes. They all derive from a single bird species that arrived here from the Central America area. And in fact, I think that it's possible to key the approximate time of the arrival based on the genetics these days. How did that little bird, not much bigger than that, get out here from across 2,500 miles of ocean? There are a few things that in a short period of time before jet aircraft or navigation could get here in that interval of time. And yeah, get here at all. But hurricanes will do that and tropical storms. So maybe flotsam and jetsam or what have you.
And we do have some migratory birds that come through.
We do have migratory birds too. That's right. But being so isolated, these birds are native bird species are quite vulnerable to introduced insects, rats, which weren't native, probably came with the Polynesians originally. Mongooses, and you haven't seen a mongoose yet. Anybody know what a mongoose looks like?
Is it kind of like a weasel?
Yeah.
It's a bit like a weasel. We'll probably see one or two running across the road. Basically, of all the island groups around the world, Hawaii is the most isolated island chain, significant island chain, geographically speaking. Has the largest dieback in terms of bird populations, over 80 species known to have gone extinct here. Not entirely due to the introduction of Western culture. A lot of that impact stemmed from early Polynesian practices as well. The capes and caps or crowns of the ali'i, the chiefs here, were largely made of stitched bird feathers, as many as 100,000 feathers going into a cloak. So it's Anyway, that's the ecology is. I think it's safe to say it's in collapse. People are trying to rectify that as best they can here. It's a big reason we have national park, is to not simply to showcase these volcanoes, but help protect the native habitat, this beautiful Ohia Hapu'u tree fern forest. Is there anything that you'd like to?
Yeah, just so yes, these two species kind of dominate the forest around here. Other Hawaiian rainforests had different species, but one thing, the Ohia tree, we'll be seeing a lot of because it is a pioneer species. So after the lava flows destroy the forest, it's one of the first plants that comes back, at least at this elevation, and we'll see that out on in the 1959 lava, where you'll see them sprouting right out of the rock. So they're uniquely adapted to actually living on the active volcano. They have adaptations that we'll talk about when we get down there, but they're amazing. And it's kind of following in his trend there. We've got, unfortunately, the Ohia is an incredibly well adapted plant. It's a Latin name, polymorpha. It takes many forms. You can find it as a massive tree in the rainforest, little shrubs. It lives at all altitudes, at almost all the climate zones, and different, the leaves can be furry or smooth. It's really well adapted, but just recently, unfortunately, a new, I think maybe a fungus has been introduced that's killing them really fast. So it's called rapid Ohia death, and they've only just isolated what they think it is, but it's kind of terrifying, because this is, you can see this is this kind of rough bark, small leaf tree with the red flowers. It makes up most of the forests of the island, and if they all die, have you guys, any of you from the west, have you seen the pine death in like Colorado? And
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm afraid is going to happen here too. We're just going to have acres and acres of just dead forest. It's really terrifying. But the Ohia is an amazing plant, and we will see a lot of it as we go. So
we'll be hiking through the range too, one of Hawaii's rarest bird species, which you'll probably hear sing. I'll point it out if we do. It's hard to miss. It's got a very melodious kind of trilling song, the Hawaiian thrush, or the omao. And if you take away the Ohia, then there goes the omao, and gosh knows what else.
you almost never see them now.
You almost never do. I've never seen a bird on this. I've heard a lot of them, but
All this from just talking about tree fur. It's so smooth.